Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What? Today we've got Omri Bouton on, and he is a Web3 lawyer. Hi, Omri.
Hi, thank you for having me, guys.
Absolute pleasure, mate. We're looking forward to this chat. We've had a few people on in a similar space. Web3 is an incredibly exciting sort of, I don't know what you call it, revolutionized technology that's going to impact a lot of different people. So it's really interesting to get people's point of view, especially someone who's focusing on the law all around it. So do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do, Omri?
Sure. I'm an associate, so I work as a lawyer at Sheridan, which is a firm in London, specialized in media entertainment. That includes also sports, video games, and we have a growing Web3 practice that is focused around cryptographic assets, including NFTs, play to earn, and we assist clients also with the setup of DAOs and other structures, revolving around products and services which are Web3 based.
Wow. So let's go back a bit. How did you get into law? Why law?
Yeah. So straight out of uni, I studied the first degree that I studied first some music production, effectively, and as you can tell by my accent, I come from Italy. So I came here in the UK to complete the first degree in music production, and right out of the gate, I opened a small, production studio. Music production studio and sound engineering together with a couple of friends of mine, course mates of mine. So as an audio engineer, we're recording bands, we're producing some music. Some of us also were involved in sound design, which means producing music, or sound effects to synchronize with ads and other form of video content. So that's really what we did. And whilst running the studio, which admittedly wasn't a crazy success or anything like that, I became very much interested in intellectual property and understanding, copyright. And I still remember reading the phrase in relation to copyright that copyright doesn't protect ideas, but the expression of an idea. And I remember just being quite confused at the time about this statement. So that really led me to searching more and more intellectual property, to the point where I decided to take on the more formal part of if you want, the music industry or the creative industries, and study to become a lawyer, an IP lawyer. So that was the first step. And so I went to law school, got a law degree, and following the law degree, I started to become very interested in while studying for the LLB, which is the undergrad. I became really interested and fascinated with video games. I've always video game law, so IP relating to interactive entertainment. I've always been a massive, an avid gamer, and that really led me to decide to study a master's course at Queen Mary that is specialized around video games. So from music to an interest in IP, from an interest in IP, broadly, to IP in the interactive entertainment and tech space, if you want.
Wow. So how difficult was it for you to go from finishing your degree in audio engineering to then going and starting your own studio and then going back to university? Did you find that difficult at all?
Yeah. It was quite difficult also because, I was young at the time, let's say, looking back, I was young, but I felt that I was, behind the curve because, of course, deciding to study again, that took time. And I decided to start studying law when I was 24. So I felt quite old. I realized later on that, it's not unusual for people following, obtaining the law degree to work as paralegal for a few years. So I'm not older than the average person that, works as a lawyer at my level of seniority. But at the time, I felt that it was a bit stressful. Also, I was studying law in a language that wasn't mine. And there was quite a difference, studying for a creative centric degree, like, for example, music production, which was very much involved in also practical assignment, and a formal law degree. But the challenge kind of helped me, putting the head down, focusing on studying. I've never really been an academic type, and I remember, starting to really enjoying learning about the law, learning about the framework in which creatives can operate, and how important really business structure becomes to the success of a creating endeavor. So which is often neglected, right? Because if you look at the creative industries and creatives in particular, they tend to have very little interest to the formalities revolving around their industry. And I think if you look at successful creative across the ages, from Michael Jackson, David Bowie, let's say in the music industry, you will see and appreciate that these people were incredible business, persons, as opposed to just incredible creatives. So, but going back to the story, so yeah, it was quite challenging. And during my time at Queen Mary, studying this particular master degree, I came across augmented reality. This was 2016, 2017, and at the time there was very little, around augmented reality, particularly, in relation to the law. And I, since discovering it and mixed reality, I became obsessed with it. To me, since then, that was clearly the future. There are some, there were some, and there are still to an extent some limitations around the technology that is available to us, especially from a hardware point of view. Software is very sophisticated now, but I decided basically I wanted to work in augmented reality in this immersive space. The problem that I saw with the immersive space is that if we can appreciate digital information in the form, say, of a hologram, or through different forms of stimulation, to our senses. So either a hologram if it's a visual stimuli, or smell and all of that. So an augmentation of the senses. If we can experience digital information in that manner, I think that the obstacle for digital information to feel real then becomes uniqueness. Because if we have two t-shirts that are exactly the same, but you ruin your t-shirt, my t-shirt remains intact, correct? And you cannot just copy and paste the t-shirts. If there are two t-shirts, those are the two t-shirts that exist that are the same. So I became very interested in how digital information could be rendered unique. How can you have unique digital information? Because if you look at the music industry, for example, the fact that you could copy and paste and peer-to-peer transfer, songs, destroyed the perceived value in music work. So this became kind of the focus for me, understanding how can you render digital information scarce, because that will have a direct correlation on the value of digital information, or at least the perceived value. And that led me to distributed ledger technology, and blockchain being an example of that.
I was going to say, it's quite interesting, isn't it? When you first talk to somebody about the whole world of Web3 and NFTs and blockchain, one of their first questions is, what do you mean that's just a JPEG? Like, that's just an image. How is there any value? And what you've just explained is that there is innate value in something that cannot be replicated exactly.
Correct.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll get to that, I guess, as part of this conversation when we look at what really is an NFT. But in relation to blockchain, or this distributed ledger technology, because of the structure of the database, because, if you look at what blockchain is, it's really a form of database, right? So, but it's distributed and it presents certain advantages. So the fact that you cannot replicate digital information gives value to that information. And that was really the breakthrough point for me as a lawyer, deciding to combine my interest in, if you want, commercial and IP, together with, deep industry understanding, which I didn't have at the time. So around the time, I finished my master, and I started looking around at, who covered, what practice covered, and what law firm covered really blockchain. And there wasn't really much. But to my surprise, one jurisdiction that did cover blockchain was Gibraltar. And Gibraltar is, I don't want to say an overseas British territory, because it enjoys more independence, so it's not completely reliant on, on England and Wales and the UK. But it's an overseas, that's a British territory at the southern tip of Spain. And the legal framework is very similar, so much so that if you qualify as a solicitor in Gibraltar, you also qualify under England and Wales. So seeing that was the case, and that I could qualify potentially for a training contract, I decided to apply at the time, for a vacation scheme, which effectively is, it's a summer experience, summer internship in a law firm called the Sands in Gibraltar. And it's the largest law firm. And and I got the summer experience. And during my time there, I met a partner that is still a very, close friend of mine and a mentor, I guess, for life. His name is Anthony Provasoli. He's a tier 1 fintech lawyer, and he was really starting to build this practice, this fintech or financial technology practice. And the reason he did that is because Gibraltar decided to regulate the use of blockchain in par with other financial services in 2018. So following the summer experience, I managed to get a training contract for the next year, following the LPC, which is the legal practice course. Every solicitor needs to do it in order to be able to qualify. And so I moved to Gibraltar from the UK. I just took everything and moved there with a view potentially to stay there. I moved there with my wife and to build a life there. And I spent about 2.5 years in Gibraltar working at the Suns, under Anthony, and with an ex-colleague of mine called Roy Balestrino. He now works at Bizzo. And during this time, really, I've been working predominantly as a commercial and financial services lawyer, because as mentioned, blockchain technology the use of blockchain technology is regulated in Gibraltar in par with other financial services. And that really gave me an opportunity to work as part of this team with some, world leading exchanges. I'm not sure which names I can say or not, so I'll refrain from, name dropping. Sure. But suffice to say that many exchanges that are based in the UK and even around the world came to Gibraltar to seek the license, because the license would prove both to investors and consumers that the company in question is a serious company, because it's not easy to get the license. It's a very long and expensive and difficult process to go through. But at the end of it, companies really mature and are able to mitigate the risks that come, when using blockchain. So that's really where I developed, if you want, my understanding of blockchain, cryptographic asset, financial services regulation, including anti-money laundering, which is kind of inherent to financial services. And that's where the bulk of my experience come from. And
wow. That's quite a journey, isn't it? From doing your first degree in audio engineering and having a passion for gaming to taking all that on. I mean, that's, you said you're not academic, which is nice to hear somebody who's a lawyer saying, look, I'm not academic, but look what I've achieved. I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, I think the secret, it's not really a secret, and I'm going to sound so cheesy, but, I've always let my curiosity drive me. I've never felt guilty, taking decision based on my curiosity, even if sometimes, it may lead, especially when it comes to hobbies, less on the professional side. But, I tend to be quite inconsistent in my hobbies, and I don't see a problem with that, because it allows me to explore a lot of different, subcultures, which I think actually plays a key part of why I love so much the NFT space, because NFTs really are distributed subcultures, and then B, why I resonate with people that operate in this industry. So to close the loop, when I was in Gibraltar, then my wife and I decided to move back to the UK. I've had an amazing experience in Gibraltar, but I missed subculture, to be honest, and that's what you can really find in places like London. You could be into any form of you could have any form of interest, and there are going to be groups of people that are into the same kind of niche that you're in, and you can explore it with them and all of that. So So we decided to relocate, and that's when I joined the Sheridans. I was supposed to join more as an IP and commercial lawyer with a nice to have crypto, understanding or like a strong experience. And then from the first day I joined, someone mentioned, I remember being asked a question, you know about crypto, right? Like, yeah, that's basically all I've done. So they put me on a call in front of a potential client, and ever since that's all I've done. So I've been working exclusively on NFT projects, especially being in a law firm that specializes in media and entertainment. There is a lot of talent coming from the more traditional creative industries like music, film, and TV, sports, esports, video games, theater, and so on, that want to get into Web3. So those are part of the clients that I dealt with, especially early on. And now I would say that we also have a very strong client base in crypto native talent, that being NFT artists, or being people that are involved at all levels of the industry. Some financial services provider, they use blockchain, play to earn. We're dealing with a lot of play to earn providers and developers, and we help assessing effectively the regulatory risk, which and that encompasses, for example, managing IP on blockchain and distributed databases, like IPFS. Then it revolves around financial services risk. Securities, you might have heard. There is potentially a risk for certain tokens to fall under the scope of financial services regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Anti-money laundering, gambling is also something that needs to be assessed. So it's a technological convergence, and as technology and industries converge, so do areas of law and regulation. So it's important to cover all of these. And then we also help with the setting up of DAOs, and to the extent that's possible, just general business structuring, SAFT, which is simple agreement for future allocation of tokens and equity. Those tend to be all core aspects of the Web3 industry, and it's great to be able to work in this space, and really at all levels.
I think it's really interesting. Going back to one of those points you mentioned earlier, where you were brought in for maybe a slightly different reason, and the crypto knowledge was a nice to have. I think you're the third lawyer to tell us that exact same thing. Your practices are now starting to clock onto the fact that, actually, this is a real asset to have, and it's a whole different department to itself. Which brings me on to the question: if people are thinking about going and studying law now, there's so many different technologies and things like NFT and blockchain that are changing the world. Would you say to any young person going to study law, look, get into one of these, breakaway, like whether it be fintech, insurtech, blockchain, whatever it be, specialize in that. And the opportunity there is vast, because we're just at the beginning of trying to regulate these spaces.
So I think that, to answer why probably other people were in my same position, is because there wasn't really an industry up until now in the UK, that revolving around especially NFTs, and from legal perspective. And, I was very lucky being able to go to Gibraltar and develop such a strong understanding, because it's one of the main markets there right now. So, I was able to work for almost 3 years purely in this space, when in the UK there was nothing like that. So, and I think that was great, but also I guess that an important part of why, let's say, I've been successful to an extent in this endeavor, in terms of why the firm decided to give me more and more opportunities to develop this part, together with the partner I work with, is also because, to me, this is what I'm passionate about. So I work during the day as a lawyer in NFTs, and during the evening, nights, in my spare time, this is also my community. This is where I spend my time. This is what I talk about. This is what I'm interested in. So, there could be an argument for students to perhaps specialize in an upcoming area. But to me, you can't really, you can't make up, passion simply because of, say, commercial interest or interest in career. I think, I would give that advice certainly to every person that is interested in the technology, in the use of technology. But if that's not the case, and say you're passionate, about real estate, say, or corporate, or, everyone is different, then I would rather suggest you go into that space, because no one is going to be able to compete with you, or very few are going to be able to compete with you, if you not only practice in an area, but also you're passionate about that area. Say if you're someone that enjoys, investing in the stock market, then you could look at financial services, for example. Your level of understanding is going to be far beyond what you'd get simply by working as a lawyer in that space, because you're going to be refining it all the time.
No, that's understandable. What do you think of some critical personality traits of yourself that have allowed you to thrive or be able to develop within this crypto law world?
Mm-hmm. I would say curiosity probably plays them, it's the most important one. I've always been very, very, interested in technology, culture, art. So that's curiosity, I would say, is definitely very important. Coming from a non-traditional background as well. So the fact that, I opened kind of I was behind a commercial effort with these friends of mine in the form of a studio before joining law. Not being very formal as well. I mean, I'm formal to the extent that, you know, you need to be as a lawyer, but having had experiences before becoming a lawyer, I would say, different experience to, you know, the law itself, that was really useful. And I think, you know, a lot of law grads end up doing paralegal work whilst waiting for the training contract, for example. I think if you secure a training contract, and you know, normally that is secured 2 years in advance, then I would actually encourage, you know, future trainees to take those 2 years and try to seek experiences in different roles and capacities, because then they're going to be able to incorporate that experience in, you know, their provision of legal services. And you can notice that. You can notice, you know, a mix of background, a mix of interests. So also, I think, you know, never being afraid of injecting as much personality as possible in your conversation with the clients. Potentially also, you know, commenting on the product. That's also a big part of what I do, for example, in day-to-day. I'm asked to work as a consultant somehow, sometimes, you know, some matters, because I'm interested in the market, you know, beyond just the legal side. So I'd say, yeah, letting as much of your personality as possible, you know, of course, maintaining a level of formality and being professional at all time. But I think, you know, being confident in doing that, I think that's probably one of the main points. Yeah.
And what do you think are two real key skills somebody needs to be working in what you're doing right now?
Well, definitely problem solving. Well, I don't know. Two is very restrictive. I think
you can have more or less. It's up to you.
Okay. So, for example, one important aspect, I think, and I think lawyers at the beginning especially shy a little bit away from it, is understanding that not everything is black or white. You know, some things are, but others, you know, as a lawyer, you really need to understand, especially operating in new areas of law and regulation where there are regulation, but maybe there isn't as much guidance from the regulator. I think it's important to be able to understand risk and you know, and learn how to deal with the risk and how to present different options to client, presenting also the different level of risk that is associated with each option. So it's almost putting on the head of an entrepreneur. Ultimately, you know, it's not for us lawyer to take decision on behalf of the client, but we can assist them by providing information and, you know, different options. So that's one. Second, of course, you know, being curious and wanting to go beyond. So, you know, since Elon Musk broke it down in this way, it's just easy to refer to that in that manner. But, you know, reasoning from first principle. So breaking down everything, not assuming any, not taking anything for, you know, granted, or not operating by way of analogy, really breaking down everything down to the core. So to give you an example of this, the term staking is often used to describe mechanisms, you know, that are relevant to NFTs and crypto. And, you know, many projects implement some form of staking. But if you look at it properly, you know, staking can refer to multiple things. In a proof of stake network, then staking would refer normally to, you know, the mechanisms whereby certain participants can become validators within the network. In other example, for example, in proof of works, and Ethereum right now is still a proof of work stage, although, you know, it should move to proof of stake at some point in the future. It normally refers just to some form of lockup mechanism with an incentive for people to do that, in the hope that that will have, you know, some price effect on the assets that are locked away. So, I mean, maybe that's a bit technical, but I just wanted to offer, you know, an example of that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And then what for you has been probably the biggest positive you've personally taken out of working in this industry so far?
The clients. It's the best thing ever. I absolutely love working with the client I work with. We share, you know, very similar interests. We definitely resonate. It's not always easy, but I'd say that's the best part of working as a lawyer. You know, you assist on multiple projects. So if you were to work, for example, as an in-house lawyer, which has its own perks, you are working with one company on one project, or maybe a few projects, you know, that are offered by the company. But when you work as a lawyer in a law firm, in a law practice, you get new projects all the time, and some of the clients that I work with are visionaries, and it's incredible to be able to become friends and start to exchange opinion about the industry and all of that. That I'd say is probably
On the flip side of that, though, what would be some of the disadvantages of this industry that you found so far?
In my capacity as a lawyer, confidentiality, because I would love to be able to say, what projects I work on, and probably most clients would have no problem with that. But I take it very seriously, so I never really, mention the project I work with. But then you see the news and you see other lawyer posting about it, and you want, to say, I'm a part of that, or I'm the person behind it, and to me, it's more, the client matters more than my personal marketing in this case. So, it's not a massive negative, but I'd say that that's sometimes, something that I would like to be more vocal about.
And then, in your opinion, all this NFT, Web3, the kind of words that are being, put around about it, revolutionary, going to change a lot of things. What's the number one thing, and it's probably hard to nail it down, but that really excites you? You mentioned, you love the gaming aspect and gamification and NFT communities, but what's the number one thing about the space that makes you go, wow, this is really cool?
The next 5 years. And I would say that in 5 years time as well, it's, what this technology allows. And of course, for now, I'm still on this augmented reality journey. One thing that I need to mention also, Sheridan's deal a lot with augmented reality experiences. The video game team. So to me, something that is important to highlight is that NFTs are infrastructure. They're not, I invite people, not to think about NFTs as products, services, or experiences, but they're rather an infrastructure, and the blockchain particularly, on which you build products, services, and experiences. So to me, the fact that you can have, digital scarcity, and the fact that that will form a core part of, immersive technology such as, augmented reality, that to me is the most exciting aspect of it right now. And I'd say that's probably the thing that excites me most.
Sure. And what's something that's probably not in your job description, but you still have to deal with?
Admin. As a lawyer, loads of admin. Yeah, actually, going back to the question of what's the negative, admin. Yeah, unfortunately, everyone has to deal with that, and it's just a must. But it's the more admin part of the role.
And would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
100%.
It sounds like you just genuinely have a passion for it. Like you said, go into something you have a passion for, and it won't feel as much like work as it could do.
Yeah, I mean, it still can feel, it can feel that work. I think that there are different challenges. When you love something, for example, the way I do, and I do generally love this space and my role, then you're dealing with other type of challenges, right? Because you feel you never do enough. I don't know how to explain. It's you, and it's not really because of the growth. It's more, this is, a once in a lifetime opportunity. I've always strived to be at the forefront of a space. And I'm feeling that right now, together with other few colleagues, not just the Cheritons, but generally, I am at that stage, or I'm getting there. And when you get to this stage, it's incredible. But at the same time, you always feel that maybe you're not pushing enough. And it's a first world problem, but it messes up with your head. So, and I just want to be completely honest. And I think that other people in my position, I know that other people in my position feel the same. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Omri. It's been a genuine pleasure to hear about how you've got to where you've got. I think it's a really incredible journey, and wish you all the best of luck with your future projects.
Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation.
If someone had any questions, where could they find you? And also, what would be some good communities they could find out more about what's going on with blockchain,
etc.? So I highly encourage, it's a difficult one because it's almost, of course, you have Discords, and Twitter, I would say, is probably the most relevant one. I'd say I've never used Twitter, in the past. And since, becoming more involved in blockchain and NFTs, I've really started enjoying it. So I'd say go on Twitter and start searching for relevant accounts. A quick Google search on like NFT influencers will open the door, and then you go from there.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Omri.
Cheers.